Good morning or good afternoon, and a warm welcome to all. You have joined the introduction session for Module 4, Managing Website Projects, in which you'll hear from museum professionals who have managed website projects through times of great change, using teams of volunteers, in-house staff, and community partners. Our truly amazing speakers will share information about projects that have been agile, effective, budget-friendly, and forward-thinking. It's time to get inspired. This is the first session in Module 4 of the Digital Empowerment Project, a nationwide initiative organized by the 6 U.S. regional museum associations that is dedicated to providing free, self-paced training resources for small museums. This inaugural series of online trainings and resource toolkits focused on digital media and technology topics is made possible by funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. My name is Zinnia Willits, and I am the Executive Director of the Southeastern Museums Conference. My pronouns are she, her. I am a light-skinned white female with shoulder-length reddish-brown hair. I'm wearing black-rimmed glasses that are often referred to as cat-eye style. And today, I'm wearing a solid black sleeveless top, and I'm sitting in front of a backdrop of a home office with a window and a set of white closet doors behind me. As the host for today's session, I would like to convey a few things to our attendees before we begin the program. First, in this era of virtual meetings, when digital spaces may substitute our physical sense of place, it is important to reflect on the land we each occupy and honor the Indigenous people who have called it home. Today, I'm speaking to you from Ocala, Florida, the historical homelands of the Timucua and Seminole peoples. Wherever we are, let us acknowledge all Indigenous nations as living communities, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations. We, the Digital Empowerment Project team, recognize that our organizations and those of our members were founded within a colonizing society that perpetuated the exclusions and erasures of many Native peoples throughout the United States and beyond. We ask you to reflect on the place where you reside and work, and to respect the diversity of culture and experiences that form the richness of our world and our profession. Thank you. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. First, we'll hear from Kathy Saunders. Kathy is the Lighting the Way coordinator at the New Bedford Whaling Museum in New Bedford, Massachusetts. She has 3 decades of experience developing innovative programs with the Science Museum of Minnesota, Providence Children's Museum, Lippitt House Museum, and the New Bedford Whaling Museum. At the Whaling Museum, she coordinates Lighting the Way, Historic Women of the South Coast, which offers historic profiles housed on the project website, which are the inspiration for programming that explores and amplifies the impact of women from the region. Kathy earned her master's degree in museum education leadership from Bank Street College and currently serves on the New England Museum Association Board. Kathy will be followed by Dr. Fran Kaplan, a consultant for America's Black Holocaust Virtual Museum and co-founder of Nurturing Diversity Partners in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dr. Kaplan's 55-year career has been spent working for social justice and peace locally, nationally, and internationally. She holds a doctorate in educational leadership and a Master of Social Work degree. Her work as an adult educator, social worker, and community organizer has taken her into various arenas, including farm worker rights, women's health care, child abuse prevention, parenting education, and public history. From spring 2010 through summer 2017, Dr. Kaplan worked as a full-time volunteer with the community group working to reestablish America's Black Holocaust Museum. I have truly enjoyed getting to know both of these wonderful women, and I'm thankful for the time each has devoted to this session. Now I am pleased to turn the floor over to Kathy Saunders to begin our session.
Thank you, Zinnia. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Kathy Saunders. I'm the coordinator for the Lighting the Way project at New Bedford Whaling Museum, Lighting the Way Historic Women of the South Coast. So just a little bit about New Bedford Whaling Museum to begin. We are located in southeastern Massachusetts on the traditional homelands of the Wampanoag people. The Whaling Museum is so much more than just the history of whaling. It is a comprehensive museum of history, culture, science, and art. And it is a mid-sized museum rather than a small museum. Its budget is about $4 million a year, and its annual visitation is a little over 100,000 visitors a year. However, this particular project started out as an independent project that then was brought in under the wing of the Whaling Museum. I will be talking about that. So the original idea for Lighting the Way came from a local woman leader who said, we need a coffee table book to tell people about women's history and all the women's stories who are untold. And as she started talking to other community leaders, it quickly became clear that a coffee table was really static and that would soon be out of date and didn't meet the needs. And so from there, it came up with the idea of we need to create a website and that will have longevity. And so this started pulling together leaders from arts and culture, leader from history organizations. The original steering committee had, I think, over 40 organizations involved. And the Whaling Museum, as one of those partners involved, stepped forward and offered to be the fiscal agent. And then as the program became more established, really took on the project and then decided to hire a part-time staff person who is myself to work with it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background of the project before my time and then dive into what the website looks like and how we use it. So that initial collaboration, they launched the program fully in 2018, the summer of 2018, and they had a huge event with 600 people attended. There were costume interpreters. There were guided walking tours throughout downtown New Bedford, showing locations that women's stories were connected to. There was a printed trail map that was passed out and put out throughout the downtown. And this was all to draw attention to the website, which had these profiles of women that they'd started collecting stories of. So the website itself is on a WordPress platform. And if you go back of house in the WordPress platform, you'll see that these profiles actually are technically blog posts. Doesn't look like that to the user, but that's how the operational side of it works. This website was developed. One of the community partners had a relationship with this husband and wife design team. They were really supportive of the project. They designed the initial website. And really that core of it was that it was going to be these profiles. And because that was the core of the programming, was how do we get the stories of these women that so many people haven't heard of? Because not only did we want to put women who may have been more well-known, like Rosetta Douglas, who is the daughter of Frederick Douglass, but we wanted to put people like Noli, the Goat Lady of Dartmouth, who had recently passed away. These stories of community members that people knew or had relatives or were connected to. So then as the website sort of got sort of transferred into the Whaling Museum, meant that then the Whaling Museum webmaster, who was another part-time person at the museum, was handling any of the updates that came along with it. So when I started the museum, the website looked like this. It was the home for these profiles. The one programmatic activity that was happening at the time was this idea of a walking trail. And they had that trail in the form of a paper map that was printed or downloaded in a PDF. They also had put those many of those profiles up on a mobile app. And then they also occasionally offered live guided tours. Now, when I was brought in 2019, there was a great desire to look ahead to 2020 and the centennial of women's suffrage. And wouldn't this be a great time to add on more substantial programming that highlighted the importance of women's history and the women's right to vote in the election year? And the way I walked into it was I said, well, we really need to do some strategic visioning. And, you know, if I'm going to know how to develop this program, I need to know what our vision is and what our values are and how I can connect all the programming that has been tossed out into that to help guide us. And that in turn guided one of the first things I did, which was went back to that original web designer and said, we need our website homepage to reflect our strategic vision. So you'll see a couple of things that are changed here. One is that the core of the project is those profiles. So wanted the profiles more prominent. We also wanted to really help people understand that this was live, that profiles were being added, that this was not a static project. And certainly it was a question I often got asked, which are the newest profiles? Who are the newest additions? So this top bar here scrolls through the 10 most recent added profiles. And then there was a lot of programming that we wanted to do. And so we added these spotlights, these 3 spotlights, basically buttons, icons and buttons to link to the web pages with more descriptions to those. And that allowed us to be current, dynamic, but also show the information in a very visual way. And in fact, I took this screenshot last week. And if you go to our webpage today, you'll see that this first button for Ignite has now been swapped out with our guided walking tours for summer. So that allows us to keep an easy way to keep our homepage fresh and really reflect those programmatic goals. And that strategic vision helps me prioritize what we want to be highlighting at any given time. So what I'm going to do is just share a couple of examples how we have used the website to further our programmatic vision beyond just promotion of programs that we're doing, which we obviously do. If you go to our website, you can see that part of it. But here are places where we've used our website in some interesting and creative ways to help achieve our programmatic goals. So the first that I want to talk to you about, well, I'll just very briefly, we use it to promote the walking trail, but I'm going to focus on the more interesting projects. So we've got the Ignite Youth Artist Showcase, and that was, I think we've done this for 3 years in a row now. We invite young artists ages 12 to 22 to look at our profiles, to pick a woman that they're interested in, and then develop an art piece that's inspired by one of them. So we're driving a younger audience to engage with the content on our website. And then we have this terrific website where we can then showcase the work that they've done. And we do this through, we have static images of the winners. We have a slideshow of all the presentations, of all the art submissions. And then we also have some videos of the showcase events where we get to hear from the artists as well as see their artwork. So it's a way to really have it live beyond that one-time event that's held, and to highlight these magnificent young artists and to make the profiles have a new life. Also during the pandemic, we were able to connect the Youth Artist Showcase on our website with the Whaling Museum's education site, inviting students to submit additional entries sort of during the off season of the contest. Another interesting project that we did was a public art selection that also tied in a piece of online voting. We knew that in this centennial year that we wanted something big and visual, and we weren't in a position to have a bronze statue built, but we thought, wouldn't it be great if we hung a banner on the side of the Whaling Museum building that featured one of our terrific historic women. And but we wanted to engage the community in this. So we decided to invite 10 young women, and we gave them 10 of the historic women who are all civically engaged. So again, connecting on the suffrage theme. And each of these women, each of the young women chose one of the historic women and then did a short 2-minute video profile of it. So again, how do you take what was a 300 to 500 word essay about this woman, put it into a new format that other people will engage with in a different way, tie in young people so that you're drawing young people to the website. So then we did these videos, uploaded them on YouTube, and which then put them into WordPress voting contest plugin and put them on our website. And then we did press releases, social media blasts, and invited the community to vote. And you could go in and you could like 3 of the videos at a time and come back the next day and like 3 more of the videos. So we got a bunch of names of historic women in front of people that they might not have ever known about, engaged, because the students were involved, it meant, their peers, their families were getting connected. So it was really a great way for that kind of engagement. So if you're interested in knowing what the plugin that we used, I put the link right on the slide here so you can see that. It was overall successful. I will say over the last weekend of voting, when we were all off, something went glitchy and people could start voting multiple times in a day. And 2 of the women had over 1,000 votes each. And so we put 2 women on our banner. So it all worked out, but you have to monitor these things, we learned. Another interesting thing we did was going into the fall election, we thought we wanted to do an election forum, and then we realized, everybody is too zoomed out. They're not going to show up for it. But how can we really meet that mission that we have of making women feel like they are seen and they have contributions to this community? We thought, let's do a Get Out the Vote campaign that features local women talking about why they vote to encourage other people to vote. So we had women do these selfies like you see here. We also had 14 short videos, like 30-second longs of encouraging people to vote. All of these, every one of these drove people back to our website where we had put a comprehensive voter information page, which included not only how to register to vote, how to find your polling place, but also how to sign up to be a poll worker. And those were put out on all our social media platforms, and was a great way, again, to sort of use our website as a platform to help engage the community at this level. So the last project that I want to talk about in terms of what we've done of sort of expanding the programmatic depth of our website is a digital exhibit we developed. So our profiles, as they exist now, are, as I said, 300 to 500 word essays, and they're great, but they don't have a lot of context. And in the year of the pandemic, or at the height of the pandemic, when we were doing so little in-person activities at the museum, we were trying to think of ways to engage with our audiences in different ways. And we were also aware that we were going into a school year where Massachusetts teachers were now going to be required to add in a new civic engagement standards, particularly for the 8th grade. And so we thought, is there an online, could we do a digital exhibit which connects with this idea of civic education that could help meet these standards, and that supports, but then also engages, is an interesting, engaging platform and another dynamic way to engage with our content. So I connected with Road Tour, which is a project of the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, the Brown University Public Humanities Program, and the Rhode Island Historical Society. And they already have a program called Road Tour, which is on a website and a mobile app. It's on the CurateScape platform. And they have these tours or digital exhibits on 35 different topics. And we said, what do you think about having us do one for Lighting the Way? They love the idea. They expand outside of Rhode Island into southeastern Mass. So we did this. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's a map of where it's, they're all place-based. So you can see the places that we chose connecting with 7 women's stories. And then on the right, I just took this screenshot to show an example of what we were able to do on this platform that is different from our website. We were able to add videos and images that provide context to the story. Every one of the stories that we put on Road Tour on this Organizing New Bedford Women Who Mobilized Change digital exhibit, every one of the story pages has a link back to our website, both to the woman's profile, but also back to these educator resources which support those civic education standards. And I will just say that we launched that in February. The duration of visits on both their site and our site have been very positive, and they reported to us that of their 35 tours this spring, ours was ranked number 4 on there. So we've been really pleased with the outcome of this. So what's next for the Lighting the Way website? Well, we want to augment the profiles to be more engaging. We loved how Road Tour allowed more images, more context, so we want that. We also know that a lot of people don't realize that Lighting the Way is a project of New Bedford Whaling Museum, and New Bedford Whaling Museum has such amazing content in the archives, currently digitized and stuff that also is not digitized in our collection. So this summer, I actually have an intern going through and inventorying possible pieces of the Whaling Museum collection that would connect to the stories, so that then we will then be adding links and images that enrich those stories. We also want to continue adding more profiles. When I came, there were 60 profiles on the website. There's 111 profiles right now. We have a list of another 30 names. People keep adding lists, and we also are reaching out to other communities where we have less representation, asking them to come forward with new names of women that we don't know about. And that has also led us to be partnering in the fall with a University of Massachusetts Dartmouth class, which is going to be doing research. And what I'm really excited about that is most of our researchers and writers who have been contributing are of an older demographic, and this will be a younger demographic. They may find stories and new perspectives that we hadn't considered before and haven't been represented on our website. So we're very excited about that. So I just want to talk to you about a couple of, let's see, it's like, well, that was supposed to be a beautiful image of my logo on the left-hand side. So sorry about that. Just use your imagination there. So the challenges that I've found with this are lots of hands in the pot. So there are times when I have to go back to that original designer when nobody on staff at the Whaling Museum can figure out how to make a change. We also have had some transition in the Whaling Museum staff. So a lot of times I'm spending project management trying to figure out who knows how to do this that needs to be done on the website, and when can it be done, and how can I get in your schedule because this is not your priority. I've learned how to do some things, but there's other things where I'm like, I am not going to mess with that. So I think that's been a real, just a reality that I've had to face. The other thing is that when they started this, they didn't really know where they were going, and they were just super excited and started throwing stuff up on the website. And As I learned where we were going and more about WordPress, I really had to do some restructuring. We had to had an intern work with me to completely do redo the tagging and the categorization, and we sort of changed the structure of the pull-down menus, trying to anticipate, things that would be coming down the road. Again, kind of the New England house analogy. You start building, and then you realize, really, we should have thought putting the front door here instead. And then finally, I mentioned briefly at the beginning that we had a mobile app that they launched at the same time as the website, and nobody used it. So we discontinued it at the time that we launched Road Tour, because there we were riding on this bigger platform where we were getting seen, rather than just sort of out solo on our own. And that is what I have to share with you today. I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. And feel free to email me, and please do check out our website. And I am very excited for what my colleague Fran is going to be sharing with you in a few moments.
Kathy. I'm really surprised at how many things our two museums have in common. In listening to you, I found a lot of connections. And anyway, I'm very glad to be here. It's an honor to be asked to do this. I am with America's Black Holocaust Virtual Museum, and also, as you heard, a co-founder of Nurturing Diversity Partners, which is my full-time job, and the museum has been my full-time volunteer job for over 10 years, 11 years I think we're into now. So I'll tell you more about that. But I want to just tell you a couple of the things that I hope to cover in this 20 minutes. I want to tell you what the initial inspiration for this virtual museum was, and how America's Black Holocaust Museum went from a brick and mortar museum, which had to be closed, to a virtual museum only, which took its place, to a museum beyond walls that developed out of the virtual museum, and now back to a brick and mortar museum and still maintaining and growing the virtual museum. I'd like to talk to you about how the virtual museum structure evolved, and how we think about, curate, and manage our virtual content, which is about 3,300 pages right now, and grows all the time. Talk to you a little bit about the staffing and what it costs to do this, how we managed to build this over the last 11 years as a volunteer project, and kind of what it's cost. So, I'm probably in a fairly different place in some ways than many of you, because this is not my salary gig, and it hasn't been, and it's really completely built, or virtually completely built, on volunteers. So, but you probably use a lot of volunteers, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit, just to give you an idea of how we use volunteers in the virtual space. And I think one of the things that I'm proudest of is that I kind of anticipated. I'm an elder. Those of you who can see my white hair, probably my wrinkles too. And people are surprised that I anticipated by over 10 years the shifts that organizations would have to make in this past year from bricks and mortar to virtual. But, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So I hope to share some of the key learnings that I've had over this time. Some of them may have to go into the Q&A, but some of the things that we learned about are, how to set the reading level and how to field test that. The importance of visuals and what kind over time we learned about as the internet started to change. How to do community engagement and programming in a museum that had no walls, or what we said beyond walls. And the interest internationally in this museum, which is surprised me. I thought that race and racism were an American issue primarily, at least in the way that it's structured in the United States. But people all over the world visit this museum. Some of our exhibits are published in France and Germany in books because it turns out that people are very interested in this. I was interested in Kathy's unused mobile app because, of course, there's been a lot of talk for us about moving to an even more mobile situation with the onset of the comeback of the physical museum and how we integrate these two museums. So let me just give you a tour of the museum. This is Dr. James Cameron on the left here, the founder of America's Black Holocaust Museum. Let me just say something about the title. A lot of times people just say the American Black Holocaust Museum. This was Dr. Cameron's vision to help people understand what the Holocaust has been like that Black people have experienced in the United States in particular. And his vision was to cover from captivity in Africa to the present day. And that's a pretty big scope. He founded this museum when he was 74 years old. I'm ashamed to say I've just gotten to 74 and I'm tired. But he lived to 92 and was working in the museum until then. Dr. Cameron is the only known survivor of a lynching in the United States of America. And I think his conception for this museum was brilliant as a historical and memorial museum. If you're not familiar with history museums that are also historical museums, I invite you to visit here and learn more about Dr. Cameron and what that means for a museum. And on the right-hand side is our welcome video and the new building with Dr. Cameron's surviving son in front of it. These are kind of some of the main features of the museum. We have history galleries that are chronological, as Dr. Cameron had them in his physical museum. And I will give you a quick tour of a couple of those. We have a memorial to the victims of lynching. This was, so far as I know, the first memorial. Oh, I'm sorry, I see hard to hear clearly. I'll try to, do you need me to speak slower? Interpreter? Maybe I'm going too fast. The first memorial to victims of lynching in the United States is now a wonderful physical memorial in Montgomery, Alabama, but we continue this memorial online. I will show you that. There's something you could do, which is to become a Freedom Lover on our Freedom Lovers roll call wall. If you'd like to take the pledge. If you want to understand what's meant by a Black Holocaust, we encourage you to go read about it. And this, like some things that Kathy had, is a constantly populating news coverage that we have. So when we first opened the virtual museum, the media called me and said, "I understand you have breaking news. What's that doing in a history museum?" And I said to them, "Well, it's history in the making, and the past is always with us." So this is one of the ways that volunteers help the museum, is by posting the breaking news, and I can talk to you more about that. And it populates the most recent breaking news on the front page of our website. We also have some other things that we can change. We're developing a new gallery that's going to be a thematic gallery that'll look at the Black Holocaust through the eyes of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, often considered the most segregated community in the United States, the most segregated metropolitan area, which is where I live. And so this is kind of the structure of the museum. I want to take you to our mission statement. ABHM, and this is a mission for both the physical and the virtual museums, which are obviously connected. The ABHM builds a public awareness of the harmful legacies of slavery and Jim Crow in America and promotes racial repair, reconciliation, and healing. Our vision, a society that remembers its past in order to shape a better future, a nation undivided by race, where every person matters equally. And I'm going to start here by just showing you a little bit about this history that you can read about, and bringing your attention to these navigational aids and the bar at the top, and also down the side. So we're in what we call a gallery called About ADHM, and these are all the things that you could do here. These are the things that you can find. We also have another way on all our pages to get from one gallery to another and to our special galleries. So you can get to the chronological galleries and our special exhibits through this. There are, whoops, sorry, light fingers on the trackpad here. Dr. Cameron was inspired by another museum that has now a lot of its exhibits online, but didn't at the time because it was before the internet. He was in Israel in 1979 on a church trip and went to Yad Vashem, the memorial museum in Jerusalem, to the Holocaust, and was inspired there to come home and start this museum by making collections in his basement study until his wife got tired of everybody traipsing through her living room in order to see his museum. And so in 1988, he opened a physical museum separate from his home, which was unfortunately closed by the Great Depression in 2008 and by his passing in 2006, because he'd been one of the principal exhibits in the museum. He would talk to visitors and tell them the story of his lynching and how he managed to stay alive and what happened after that. Now you can read about that and see a video about that on our website. So these are some of the iterations of the museum. He started in small storefronts. Then he got a whole building that the city gave to him for $1. And after he passed away, and we had the inspiration to do a virtual museum, which happened in 2010, kind of the end of 2010, his son Virgil and I were sitting around chatting and saying, how can we revive this museum without any money? And I have a sister and brother-in-law that were very involved in web design. So I said to him, what about doing a website? I didn't know anything about doing a website. I had no idea what I was volunteering myself for at that time. But I also was unable to work because I had gotten older and ageism came into play. And with my disability, I was unable to work. So that is to make a in a regular job. So I just made this my job and worked on this, as I said, from the end of 2010 until today, and I'm still working with it. Some of the things that we did that were kind of beyond walls, we also reissued Dr. Cameron's memoir with some additions that he gave me that hadn't been in previous versions of the book. We also had every year on his birthday a huge celebration of some kind. And this particular one, we revived some lynching plays from the late 1800s and early 1900s that brought out anti-lynching activists at the time. We held in other people's bricks and mortar spaces like churches and libraries. We held interracial dialogues and so forth. So there was almost never a time when America's Black Holocaust was not active, even though the physical space was closed. I want to just show you briefly, this is an exhibit in our Reconstruction Gallery, a gallery which is fairly small still. But as I say, this museum continues to grow. This gallery, or this exhibit, Founding the New Black Community, is part of our telling of stories that don't get told often, and part of our themes, which include resilience. And so we like to have exhibits that show the resilience of the Black community, even during the Black Holocaust. And so this one was created by a scholar, Rio, who is still a graduate student. We have both graduate students and experienced scholars alike contributing as volunteers, stuff in their field that they work on. An exhibit by us is about 900 to 1,200 words, and we try to get it at the reading level of 8th to 10th grade, which is very, very hard if you ask scholars to write, so that requires some editing help, because middle school students use our website, high school students, Americans whose first language is not English, people around the world. So that's the reading level we try for. And this is one of the few digitized documents, historic documents, that ABH owns. We do not have extensive physical collections, and the ones that we do have are still locked in storage. There's no place to put them. But this one did get digitized, and it's a marriage certificate, because enslaved people couldn't marry. You can only imagine how, once freedom came, how excited people were to actually get formally married. So we use digitized information from elsewhere, obviously. We don't have all of it ourselves. We use it under the public domain. Most of our stuff, because it's historical, is in public domain. And some things that are licensed as well. As I say, we like to tell stories that are not the ones that we all get taught. Well, I didn't get taught any of this in school in my era, but most people now get taught something about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and all of that. So in the civil rights movement area, we talk about Bayard Rustin, who was the architect, really, of the civil rights movement, who was unknown because he was gay. And even though he was the principal mover and shaker behind a great deal of the organized civil rights movement, he didn't make it into this picture of the 1963 March on Washington. These are the leadership. Bayard Rustin was not in this picture because at that time they thought that this would reflect badly on the civil rights movement. And so we also try to tell stories that are what we call intersectional. And I just want to give you a sense of what the memorial is to the victims of lynching. We're trying to collect stories of lynching victims about their lives, not their deaths. We all know about their deaths. Lynching was an abomination, an atrocity. And we do tell stories of lynchings here, including the one that Dr. Cameron escaped. But we also like to tell stories of who and why they were lynched. And in this case, we do have a pretty extensive story about Anthony Crawford, because his granddaughter became a public historian, was able to save, the story in her family. Many people, like people who have trauma everywhere, don't want to talk about it. And so it is hard to collect these stories. A lot of people don't even know that these stories exist in their families. But we are starting to get more and more of that as people become aware. I thought I'd share with you the exhibit that's gotten the most comments. We do allow comments, and this one has 50, just a great deal more than most do. And it's quite curious because this is a breaking news story, actually, with something new that came up with Henry Louis Gates, famous historian, current contemporary historian, back in January of 1914, and people are still arguing about it. And some of their arguments, unfortunately, get into uncivil discourse, which is beyond our our comment policy. So what we do is, since we don't want to censor anything, we put it in an exhibit called hateful speech. So these are the vulgar and profane and whatever comments that we didn't put in the other footer of the other exhibit, because they comprise what we call hateful speech. I just want to take you briefly to breaking news. I know I'm about out of time here. And as I said, this is what we call history in the making. The most volunteers we've had, I've lost count of the number of volunteers. That's probably well over 200 in the 11 years that we've been going. A lot of them are undergraduates at universities around here, and they're mostly white undergraduates. So we call this our white students further educational program. People who do this posting for us read Black media and Black journalists every week and put up what they select. And of course, we give them some guidance in what they select, and put up breaking news for us. And the really good students learn to connect this breaking news with exhibits that are already in the museum. So we try to connect the past and the present. We use video. We use, as you can see, still pictures and things that are digitized. So here is an example about how you can learn more about the background of this subject in other places in the virtual museum and also outside. So they learn to aggregate these, to excerpt them, and to post them. And that's a lot of our use of volunteers, in addition to our scholar griots. So if you have questions after this is where you can find me. And I've given also, I think, some links that you can follow that may be in the chat later. And I'll be very happy to answer your questions.
All right, we're all back, and I would just like to thank you both for those wonderful presentations. I will just tell everybody attending today that in preparation for this webinar and just getting to know Kathy and Dr. Kaplan, I spent a lot of time on these websites, and they are dynamic and deep and rich with such wonderful history. So thank you both really for sharing this story with us. All right, we do have a bunch of questions and probably about 5 minutes. So I'm going to try to get to about 2 or 3, but don't worry, everybody listening. We can follow this up in the forum that we have, because obviously there's a lot of interest for both of you in what you're doing. This one was particularly interesting to me as someone that comes from a collections background. You're both capturing stories of multiple, Fran, 3,000 pages of content on your website. So someone wanted to know, do you have a database behind the scenes managing the profiles, or are they captured posts or single pages on your site?
So with Lighting the Way, as I said, technically the profiles are blog posts, and so if I go back of house, I can search it by what date they were put up, what by what certain of their tags or keywords. So that allows me to manage those. But then for the user, we've created a tag cloud. We've created pull down menus of, here by century, by what town they're connected with, or what key topic. Like whaling or labor history. So I hope that answers the question for our site.
Absolutely. Fran, how about you?
Well, the breaking news is essentially everything comes into that post. We don't really operate much on a database except for the lynching memorial. So because we wanted this to be something that could easily be changed, not static. And let me tell you, one of the challenges of finding someone to do your website, we have found, is trying to get web designers to understand how not static museums are, how they really need to be very flexible and adaptable to changes, as we all discovered even more so in this last year.
Can I just add one thing? Just also in the back of house management, we just keep a Google spreadsheet that when someone writes a profile, they enter in the Google spreadsheet, and then it's like tasked to the next person to review it and create the tags and to upload it. So that's how we keep track behind the scenes of what's in queue and what's moving.
Okay, wonderful. This one, well, and again, Fran, this one was specifically, did you say what platform is your website?
Like Kathy, we're on WordPress, which when we started was one of the few such platforms. And we also knew that it was easy to train other people on, because we knew that lots of different people who came and went semester by semester were going to have to be on it. And so we wanted it to be very simple to use and something people might be familiar with.
Absolutely. Okay, here's another one that I'm sure lots of people out there will be interested in. What avenues have you explored for funding your website upgrades or features? Who wants to jump in on that one?
I'm going to defer to you, Fran, first.
Well, we haven't had funding. This has been a volunteer effort. When we started it for the first 10 years, all the funding came out of my pocket. So things like web hosting, the designer were mostly a volunteer, but we need to pay for some of their work. There's been a few things. Now there is some funding because of the reestablishment of the physical museum. So this year, the physical museum gave me some money, a small budget to work with. But I'd say that one of the places to go for us for this kind of funding in the future will be the humanities funding, digital humanities funding that every state, I think, has a humanities council, and then there's, of course, National Endowment for the Humanities. So that's where we'll be going. IMLS until a year ago did not define a museum as being digital, and now there's room for as we all know, for digital projects. But we couldn't find a place to get funded as a grassroots organization for this initially.
Yep. Kathy?
I think I'll just add that we've, any general funding request that we've put in, whether to a corporation or a small foundation, has, incorporates the prominence of the website and the costs. And so it's in a way we sort of say this is part of the overhead of the project. But I can't think of funding that we did not get a digital humanities grant, but that's actually because we're probably too large a museum because they were focused on small museums.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that definitely gives a lot of people some thought about where to go. So we are running low on time, and I have one final question that I'll be interested to hear how you both answer it. But then just everybody who's listening, some of these questions, Fran, there was even one about what makes, a museum if it's all on the website. So I think definitely there's room for conversation here to continue on our forum. But the final question that I'm going to pose to both of you, if you could start your website project over, what would you do differently? Maybe just the one or two. Anyone first?
Well, I think one of the things just for me content-wise is it was such a labor of enthusiasm putting it together, but I think we're recognizing that we want to create some more standards around the profiles. And so we're sort of building those out now as we go forward. I think that's, again, what's your structure, what's your consistency across what you're doing?
Yeah, I don't know, given when we started and how we had to start, what I would do differently. What I would do differently now. Now there seems to be a real opening for digital humanities projects. And, if I could wave my magic wand, I would get somebody as a, fund developer who really knows how to access that. Because that's not really in my, ballpark so much. Because I do think that there's a lot of opportunity out here now that there hasn't been, thanks to the coronavirus. I mean, it's one of the silver linings in the cloud is we may be zoomed out, but at least we all know how to use Zoom, and we all know how to engage the community in this way. And so I think there's a lot more understanding of things that we could do. If I had funding right now, I would do some GIS projects, some other kinds of interactive stuff. One of the things we've long wanted to do is to gamify some of our history so that people could interact with it as a game.
Yeah, and I just think personally, when I started, there was some assumption of like, other people are going to handle the behind the scenes tech. And then in some ways, if I could go back and say, I would do an intensive learning of WordPress and what it can and can't do, that might have changed how I approach some things. Mm-hmm. So it's that time, take the time to learn, that before you delve too deep can sometimes help.
Well, and I will just add, as someone who was thrown into managing a website with no experience of doing so, I completely understand and appreciate the reality that you're both putting to these projects and the passion behind it, though. That's what's fueling it. And one of my favorite aspects of this whole project is being able to give attention to these amazing sites and museums out there and putting real people to the websites and real experiences. So I really want to thank you both for your time today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and do my host duty and go ahead and wrap us up. So thank you. So for everybody listening, thank you all for attending today's inspiring session on managing website projects. And a huge thank you again to Kathy and Fran for sharing their journeys with website development, management, and collaboration. So just a few super quick reminders. I know we're at time. Don't forget to visit that forum on our website to ask questions related to this presentation or additional tech questions. Finally, please join us for the first technical training workshop for Module 4, which will focus on what you need to get started with a website project, including easy-to-follow step-by-step processes and helpful guides and checklists for goal setting. It's a good one. Project phases and team building. And this session will be taught by Despy Mays. She is the founder and lead strategist of Bluebird in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I've truly enjoyed being back as host for Module 4, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you all for attending today's session, and have a fabulous day.